Hello everyone and welcome back to my channel. Today we are going to take a look at one of the latest survival horror games, the Callisto Protocol. This game takes place in a distant space station and promises a thrilling experience filled with action and horror. The Callisto Protocol is the spiritual successor to the Dead Space series, but is it worth your time? Let's find out. The Callisto Protocol is a new game that has been inspired by the Dead Space series. It aims to recreate the horror and sci-fi elements of the original series, but with improved graphics and gory details. Players can expect to experience intense battles with space zombies and navigate through blood-streaked hallways just like in the original game. Although the game does deliver a satisfying level of gore, it falls short in other areas, such as control issues, unbalanced combat, and a lack of innovation. Overall, the Callisto Protocol offers an exciting but brief gaming experience of about 8 hours, but it may not live up to the expectations set by its predecessor. The Black Iron prison on the moon of Callisto has been hit by a catastrophic event, resulting in a prison riot. The convicts have been infected by a virus that has turned them into dangerous mutated beings. The protagonist, Jacob Lee, a wrongly imprisoned cargo pilot, must navigate through the ruined and infested facility to uncover the truth behind the chaos and find a way off the planet. He must face a journey filled with tight spaces and intense encounters with the mutated convicts. The developers, Striking Distance Studios, have done an excellent job in creating a creepy and immersive environment, with each area having its unique features, such as maintenance rooms with hanging corpses and frosted facilities beyond the prison walls. While the game has a linear progression, players can expect a different experience in each location they visit. The Callisto Protocol's diseased prison left me in a constant state of fear and uncertainty. The lead actors Josh Duhamel and Karen Fukuhara do a great job in bringing their characters to life, but the true impact of their situation is conveyed through the striking art direction and audio design. The camera is positioned closely behind Jacob, allowing players to see the sweat and blood on his body and the sewage that covers him after he is forced to walk through waste management. Everything in the game is thick, gross and unsettling, and the audio design, with its scrapes and squelches, adds to the horror. The game uses a common technique of loading new areas through narrow gaps, but instead of becoming a nuisance, it reinforces the feeling of dread. As Jacob makes his way through the disgusting lower levels of Black Iron, the winces on his face reflect the unease that I felt as a player. The Callisto Protocol's putrid penitentiary left me with an unrelenting feeling of insecurity. Let's talk about the giant mutant monster that is present in the game. The Callisto Protocol is in essence a Dead Space game under a different name. The development studio, Striking Distance Studios, is led by Glenn Schofield, who is a co-creator of Dead Space. The game features a minimalistic HUD, where Jacob's health bar is integrated into the back of his neck similar to a phone battery indicator. Players must stomp on crates and corpses to uncover valuable resources, and the combat system is heavily reliant on a telekinesis ability powered by a battery. There is also evidence of a mysterious religious cult that is connected to the outbreak and instructions on how to kill enemies written in blood on the walls. Although it lacks Isaac Clarke's stasis ability and uses conventional weapons like pistols and shotguns instead of mining tools, it still feels very familiar. For someone who has played all the Dead Space games, the Callisto Protocol campaign was full of jump scares, but lacked major story or gameplay surprises. The Callisto Protocol takes a different approach to combat compared to Dead Space, with a stronger focus on hand-to-hand combat at the start of the game. Due to the limited availability of weapons and ammunition, players must engage in close combat with mutated convicts by using Jacob's stun baton. This melee combat involves dodging and blocking incoming attacks, and then counter-attacking with the stun baton. The controls for dodging and blocking have a feeling similar to boxing games, and it feels satisfying to defeat enemies by bludgeoning them with the stun baton. The camera zooms in even closer to showcase the brutal action as you take down the infected inmates with guns. In the Callisto Protocol, players take on the role of Jacob Lee, a wrongly incarcerated cargo pilot who finds himself in the midst of a revolt in the Black Iron prison on Callisto. Despite the initial scarcity of weapons and ammunition, the game emphasizes melee combat, requiring players to get close to enemies and dodge their attacks in order to successfully land a string of blows. This type of combat is a smart way to conserve ammo and perform skill shots by automatically locking on to a weak spot and defeating the enemy with a few shots instead of a full clip. The camera angle pulls in close to the action, making for an immersive experience as the player delivers each fatal shot. The GRP ability in the Callisto Protocol is a game changer that takes away the level of tension that was previously established. This powerful tool can make combat dynamic by lifting enemies into the air and using various death traps and objects in the environment to defeat them. The ability to impale, throw, and slice enemies can be entertaining, but it also means that enemies can be defeated too quickly, making the game feel overpowered. GRP depletes over time and must be recharged or topped up with batteries, so it cannot be relied upon all the time. Despite this, it gives the player the upper hand in most encounters, making the game too easy. The overpowered nature of GRP also makes the weapon upgrade system seem less important, as the player does not feel the need to spend resources to enhance weapons. Explosive rounds or homing bullets for firearms become unnecessary when the player can throw explosive canisters or drop enemies off ledges with the GRP ability. The stealth sequences in the Callisto Protocol do not create much anxiety. In the middle of Jacob's journey, a dangerous form of the infected known as the blind variant is introduced, which resembles the clickers from The Last of Us. Despite being described as having an enhanced sense of hearing, it is surprisingly easy to take them down with a shiv even in front of other enemies. However, the real danger comes from the towering security droids that require a precise shot to the head to be destroyed, as a mistake can result in quick defeat from their high-powered cannons. However, these formidable enemies are introduced early on and then rarely appear again. The Callisto Protocol offers a variety of terrifying enemies to face. Although they are recognizable types in the survival horror genre such as zombies, rushing suicide bombers, and spider-like creatures, they all look terrifyingly disgusting, especially when you turn them into a bloody mess. As you progress, you will encounter a regenerative ability that allows basic enemies to turn into tougher brutes if you fail to finish them off. This adds a sense of urgency to fights with large groups of enemies, which can be overwhelming and intense. A perfect example of this is a late-game ride on an underground drilling platform, where you are attacked from all sides by enemies that power up from the flying rocks. This sequence is one of the most intense and adrenaline-fueling moments of the entire journey. The slow weapon swap function in the Callisto Protocol caused frustration and disrupted the player's combat experience. Tapping the left button on the D-pad was intended to swap out one weapon for another, but the animation of the character holstering the weapon and drawing the next one was too slow and could be accidentally interrupted, leading to the player still being armed with the same weapon they were trying to change. This was particularly problematic during the repeated fights against the game's mini-boss, the twin-headed tank-like creature, as the player's ammunition was rapidly depleted. Additionally, the boss fights in the game were lacking in variety and creativity, causing disappointment for the player. The Callisto Protocol has several minor issues that detract from the overall experience. One of the most frustrating aspects is the auto pickup feature when opening chests, as this means the player has to constantly go into the inventory to drop unwanted items. The game also lacks the audio logs as background music during exploration, like in other games such as Dead Space and BioShock. The constant repetition of jump scares, such as facehuggers leaping out of lockers, becomes annoying and feels like a forced prank. Although the 8-hour playtime is appropriate for the pacing of the game, there is a lack of content after beating the story. The new Game Plus mode is planned for release in a future patch, but for now, there are no interesting rewards for repeat playthroughs or alternative modes, making the game feel limited at launch. The Callisto Protocol is an intense, action-packed video game set in a grim and mysterious space station. The game's design is mainly linear, which helps in avoiding the repetition and minimizes the need for backtracking. The game has a fantastic setting that combines its brilliant art design and audio to create an eerie atmosphere. However, the game also detracts from its survival horror roots by making it too easy for the player to defeat the enemies, thus eliminating the tension and fear that the game's setting works so hard to build. Despite its thrilling melee combat, the game feels too familiar and lacks innovation, making it a spiritual successor to the Dead Space series, rather than a new and frightening experience. One of the biggest drawbacks of the game is its lack of replay value. After you beat the campaign, there is not much to do, with no interesting unlockables or alternative modes. Although a new Game Plus mode is promised via a free patch, it is currently not available, leaving the overall package feeling lacking. Another issue with the game is its quick weapon swap function, which can be slow and clunky. This can be a problem during fights against the twin-headed tank-like mini-bosses, where your ammunition reserves are rapidly depleted. The weapon swap animation takes too long and can be accidentally interrupted, which leads to frustrating moments where you have to dodge an enemy attack. But when you spring back up, you are still armed with the same weapon. The boss fights in the game are also one-dimensional and lack excitement. There are several other small issues that detract from the game's overall experience, such as the fact that opening chests automatically picks up everything inside, making it necessary to continually go into the inventory screen to drop items you do not want. Additionally, the audio logs can only be listened to while standing still and in a menu, instead of serving as eerie accompaniments to your exploration, as in other games like Dead Space and BioShock. Finally, the jump scares, such as facehuggers leaping out of lockers, can become repetitive and annoying after the 6th or 7th time. In conclusion, the Callisto Protocol is a spectacular and gory tour through a space slaughterhouse with a great atmosphere and intense action. However, it detracts from its survival horror roots, lacks innovation, and has limited replay value. Despite its flaws, it is a satisfying and bloody spiritual successor to the Dead Space series, but it falls short of being a truly new and frightening experience. And that's all for our review of the Callisto Protocol. Overall, the game offers a spectacular slaughterhouse setting with intense action, but it also betrays its survival horror roots by tipping the balance of power too far in favor of the player. While the meaty melee combat and the striking art and audio design make for a satisfyingly gory experience, there's a lack of tension and dread, and not much to do once you've beaten the campaign. If you're a fan of survival horror games, the Callisto Protocol is definitely worth checking out. But if you're looking for something truly new and original, you might want to look elsewhere. Thank you for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more video game reviews, and let us know in the comments what you thought about the Callisto Protocol. Until next time, happy gaming.